Welcome to Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord. Thank you so much for joining me today as we take a look at the astrological energies of July 29th until August 5th. Yes, we're closing out the fast-moving month of July, moving into August, and I'm actually recording this before the Aquarius Full Moon is exact. So I am curious to see what continues to play out in our experiences over the next week after the Aquarius Full Moon peaks, which occurs at 10:37 a.m. Eastern Time on July 29th. Now, as I look at the astrology of July 29th through August 5th, we have very few transiting planets and aspects that occur this week. We have 3 on July 29th, which we'll discuss, and then we have Chiron stationing retrograde on August 3rd. And that's it until we move into August more, where we're going to see Venus enter Libra, Mercury enters Leo, and both of those personal planets have more active aspects occurring. So essentially this week, the energy has more depth and complexity. And so we're going to touch on that here as July closes out. Now, I just did an episode for you on Monday discussing the major astrology of August, looking at the upcoming eclipses, as well as more of the influential aspects of the month. So be sure to listen to that podcast to get a heads up on what August is bringing our way, because we will have all the personal planets direct and highly active. And the energy in August actually feels uplifting, inspiring, forward moving. It also has great energy for the heart, love, romance, attraction. I'm going to touch on that in today's show as well. But first, let's start with what is occurring on July 29th, because we have 3 major aspects that are exact on one particular day. We have Venus in Virgo squaring Mars in Gemini at 21 degrees. Now, this aspect has actually been in play throughout most of July with that Venus in Virgo squaring Mars in Gemini. It just becomes exact the same day as the Aquarius full moon. And so throughout the month of July, where have you felt this discomfort and even a shifting energy that's hard to define between Venus and Virgo, which prefers things to be exact, clear, analytical, grounded, and organized, squaring Mars in Gemini, which is a little bit all over the place and has multiple things going on at once, could feel overwhelmed with your schedule, could sense that there's a lot I have to get done simultaneously. But the Venus in Virgo says choose one, do it well, take it to the finish line. And yet that perhaps has been difficult to do simply because of everything going on in your world, in your mind, in your energy field. And the Mars in Gemini can handle doing multiple things at once, but could also realize I'm not getting anything accomplished. I'm just scattered. And so the tension peaks here at the end of July, seeking a resolution. And that's something that occurs when a square is exact, because the challenge and the tension becomes so big that something's got to give. And in this energy, Mars in Gemini is stronger. And that's because Mars in Gemini does well with the short-term projects, giving yourself like an hour or 2 hours to move something forward without feeling like you have to be overly focused on it until it's complete. Venus in Virgo, though, is exact, and she strives for excellence and perfection, and she could have been really unsatisfied with some of your choices. Now consider this could be something that plays out in your relational dynamics, where Venus is the feminine, Mars is the masculine, and they've been in a square throughout the month of July with different intentions, themes, and motivations. And you could have felt that there was something that couldn't be discussed, understood, or resolved throughout the month. And again, that peaks here at the end of July. And there's turning points with this energy occurring during the Aquarius full moon, which I'll get to shortly. But just know that there has been a built-in discomfort between the Virgo areas of your chart and the Gemini areas of your chart. but Mars is stronger. And so there's things that you've just had to take care of and you've had to figure out and work through. It's kept you really busy, perhaps busier than you prefer. It's that energy of always dashing out the door or always having to move on to the next thing without having adequate time to be settled and grounded. But that should shift again as we move into August. And when Venus enters Libra on August 6th and August 7th, there is greater equilibrium and balance that naturally returns. So you might find that you're still in this place of tension into August, but then it will become energetically equalized when Venus moves into one of her home signs of Libra. And when she does, that will be easier to have conversations and communications that can actually go somewhere. And she'll be able to discuss what's on her mind, what she's been moving through, what she's observed. And this is also important to look at how there has been the energy of containment for this Venus in Virgo that is meant to be honored. There are meant to be times now that you're just with yourself, figuring something out internally, which is what Venus in Virgo does support. So that tension is one of the energies here at the end of July. Another big aspect exact on July 29th is the Sun in Leo conjunct Jupiter at 6 degrees, 30 minutes of Leo in your chart. And typically there is a lot of fanfare and discussion around this conjunction because it's one of the most fortuitous and abundant energies of the year. It's when we have Jupiter, the biggest planet in our solar system, conjunct the Sun, the source of life, light, consciousness, and self-awareness, working together to amplify energies in your Leo house in your chart. And this is where Jupiter comes through, and Jupiter exaggerates and amplifies what is. It's how you already feel. It's how you're already existing in the Leo qualities that Jupiter makes bigger, more pronounced, and gives you more to see, especially with the light of the sun in Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun, so it's in its home placement here, and it's bringing up more of our innate gifts, creative spirit, sense of power and strength. This conjunction can amplify your determination, what brings you life, where you feel good about yourself. These are all meant to be qualities that you learn from, which is ultimately what Jupiter offers us. Yes, Jupiter makes things easier and bigger, brings in less effort, more ease, things just show up, resources come through, invitations reveal themselves. It's all meant to make us feel supported, but it also is Jupiter as the sage, bringing you deeper wisdom around what you have worked through and what you've earned up to this point that now manifests as these rewards, recognition, and development. And so Jupiter is a reward cycle. And when it's conjunct the sun in Leo, which only happens once every 12 years, in Leo, the sun conjunct Jupiter often happens only once a year, but this is a time to look at what have you put energy into that is coming alive within you, and it's manifesting as a sense of, yes, I'm ready for this. I want this. There's forward movement here. And this is one of the big energies that's coming to life within us that you might feel after the Aquarius full moon, which I'm going to dissect that here in just a moment even more. But this particular conjunction of the sun in Leo and Jupiter in Leo is an activation. And for example, you could connect with how well are you living your light body? How well are you amplifying your sense of self in a healthy way, where you have more courage to be who you are in the world? You feel stronger about it and more confident. You could also look at this as how are the solar flares activating your light body? The sun has been very active this year as a whole, but when the sun moves through Leo, the energy is even more pronounced and stronger, and it gives us more bursts of self-awareness. And so how are you bursting open and expanding into more of who you came here to be? Now, this is a lot of fire energy, and the fire element in astrology is about inspiration exploration, movement, spiritual growth, motivation, enthusiasm. Let's go for it. Let's make it happen. Let's do the thing. But when there's too much heat, which is also the case here with the Sun conjunct Jupiter in Leo, when there's too much heat, when there's too much light, you could get a sunburn. You could feel burnt out. You could be burnt to a crisp. You could also have a hard time seeing the light. It could be blinding. There could be a blinded by the light sensation, whether that is seeing your own light or just feeling that energy somehow in your life or in your world. So with Jupiter, we do have to talk about the exaggerations. There can be too much pride. There can be too much confidence. This is also the energy of too much narcissism or an overinflated ego. There can be recklessness here and extreme competition. This can be too big for your britches. And so again, Jupiter comes in and amplifies what is already present, what already resides there. And this can help you see things for what they are. Think of Jupiter as that magnifying glass. And it's by looking into the magnifying glass that you can also get to the source of the energy, of the feeling, of the intention. So this is a beautiful week for understanding more of who you are now. Again, what lights you up, what you want to bring into your reality that feeds your creative spirit, where you feel more inspired to live a life of passion, to live a life that you're excited to embody and put energy towards. Now, this strong Leo energy also relates to entertainment, drama, performance, celebrity, talents that are on display, people that we look up to. It's interesting to note that AMC Movie Theaters, which is a company here in the US, has posted record-breaking second quarter financial results for movies and their entertainment business. AMC Movie Theaters really took a hit a number of years ago when movies were on the decline in terms of people going to the theater to watch them because everything was showing up at home, right? We could watch things from the comfort of our couches. And so I'm seeing this as a Jupiter in Leo influence where there is an increase in consuming movies and entertainment and going out to the theater to do so. But the analysts have said, we're not sure if this will last. We don't know if this is going to be a consistent trend or if it's going to fall off. So that can also be this Jupiter in Leo influence where there are successful increases, but then what happens after Jupiter leaves the sign and the downturn can be equally notable. And so Jupiter in Leo is going to continue to demonstrate where people seek out entertainment, fun, celebration, competition. We also saw the joy of Jupiter in Leo during the World Cup games. Jupiter in Leo brings alive the inner child and where you go to have fun, how you have fun. And maybe that's something you're realizing you want more of in your life. You want more fun and games and ridiculous ways of winning at something, even if it's just skee ball or pickleball. But that's the Leo spirit as well, is to enjoy life and look at where you want to consciously create more periods of time in your life that you do so. Now, another theme that's coming up here with this conjunction between the Sun and Jupiter is that it activates deeper layers of love, desire, romance, and attraction, especially in the heart chakra. And the Leo energy is meant to connect the heart chakra and the solar plexus that shows you what you are magnetized towards, what you are attracted to. Now, this can be quite unconscious. This could be the type of person you've always been attracted to, or the type of love relationships or romance that you've always sought out. This is an activation that reveals what you feel about that, what is residing in your heart. And the Jupiter energy wants you to learn, grow, and expand it. And so this can be a time when there are powerful new love relationships that open up in the cycle, that begin to come through and come in based on what you've been holding in your heart and in your solar plexus. So this is going to be a manifestation of what you've been magnetizing. And with the Leo energy, it comes in fast with movement movement, strength, determination, clarity. This energy is already underway. It is already coming in. Perhaps you're experiencing it or feeling it. Maybe you're just sensing a change in yourself, but this is an activation of what you want to pull in and experience that is good for your heart, that is good for your own love frequency. Now, the Leo energy is masculine, and so this does pertain to strong masculine desires and what you seek out. This is what you go after, because the Leo energy will pursue. It goes after what it wants and what it desires. It can even be coming from a competitive place. The female version of this is queen energy, of what you are magnetizing in that is good for your heart and sense of self. And so this is where queen and king energy can come together and magnetize in. Keep in mind that this energy starts now, but it does continue for the next year. So many of you are going to have significant love relationships that show up that are passionate, romantic, loving, and strong. This is going to be validating for those of you who have been doing your work, as we say, who have been looking at what you've been growing and evolving, especially in the Leo energies of your chart that relate to your inner child. And so you might have some connections and relationships here that grow in new ways. Now, if you're already in a love relationship and a partnership, this is going to beautifully support strengthening your bond with each other and strengthening that heart-based connection of why you came together in the first place. What is our attraction based on? What do we share? What do we have in common that is actually good for our inner childs, that allow us to play and have fun together, whatever that means, whatever that looks like for each of you. But this can be an uplifting, motivating energy. And this energy especially moves into August, where we not only have the Leo solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Leo on August 12th, but Venus enters Libra, and she's going to have some very big activations in partnership energy, especially in partnerships in your life that are out of balance or unequal. It can bring them into greater harmony. It can also help you discuss and move through any issues or problems that need to be resolved. And so there is energy here that supports romantic relationships and healthy, strong partnerships. I haven't been able to say that for a while. We haven't had that in the astrology, but now we do. We have previously had a lot of emotional healing themes, a lot of inner work, a lot of things going on that have maybe felt like you lost the spark, but this brings in a stronger spark. In fact, I think of that Leo energy as a bonfire, and that bonfire is meant to keep burning because it's a fixed sign. It's a fixed energy. And so what are you doing to feed the bonfire? All relationships need ongoing care. All relationships require us to continually show up and contribute and be a part of the energy exchange. And it can be easy to be lazy or to take it for granted. And so if that's the case for you in your life or in your partnerships, this is a time that you bring in new fuel to the fire, that you bring in more of your own life force and joy to give new light to that bonfire in your heart and in your connections. So keep in mind, this can also be something that feeds your creative spirit, that brings in new projects, ideas, and things you want to do in your life or in your world. What you would want to do in your astrology chart is look at where you have the early degrees of Leo. Now, this conjunction is happening at 6 degrees, 30 minutes of Leo, but Jupiter and the Sun have already been moving through those first 6, 7 degrees of Leo. So I would actually say this pertains to the first decan of Leo, 0 to 9 degrees. Now, keep in mind, it was a rocky start to Leo season since both the Sun and Jupiter in Leo had that square to Chiron, which would have been an injury, something denting your pride or your sense of self, maybe a crisis or an energy deflation. But now as the energy moves forward, there is greater support, especially after the Sun and Jupiter in Leo both had their opposition to Pluto in Aquarius, which was at 4 degrees and was an extended opposition because Jupiter in Leo got to 4 degrees on July 18th, July 19th, and had an ongoing opposition to Pluto that was exact until July 22nd. Then the sun, as it entered Leo, had the square to Chiron and opposed Pluto exact just earlier this week on July 27th. So basically there are turning points that are significant here in these Leo themes that I think will be strongly felt as we move more into August. The start to Leo season has been really intense and crunchy, but that's been necessary in order for us to have significant shifts that lead us into new life priorities. And that has been one of the biggest intentions of the basket that we have been discussing for a while, where Barbolt's basket, that was the 4-planet configuration aligning the end of July, has been shifting us into new levels of awareness and intentionality around how we want to live our lives and what we're actively choosing, not simply accepting what is or assuming we have to take something that was presented or that was a path we were supposed to follow. There is greater intentionality here around the individual, around you, around what you want in your life. And these shifts in July have been bringing your conscious awareness to what that could be. And that can happen quickly with the fire and air signs. But because it's the outer planets and the outer planets move so slowly, it's almost like it takes time to land and fully arrive. And then when you get it, you get it. Something really clicks and connects. And you could feel that you are newly awakening from a previous phase of life or previous version of yourself and wonder, what have I been doing? What is this about? What is my life about? What is any of this about? And it brings about bigger questions on how to live your life. And so part of the end of July is that this could be an inspiring time for new bucket list creations, new bucket list items that you're seeing and identifying that deeply resonate with where you're at this phase in your life, and even shows you new pathways forward. So on that note, let's discuss how over the past weekend, the North Node moved into Aquarius as the South Node moved into Leo. And the North Node moved into Aquarius. And what I love about astrology is that astrology is always accurate in the collective when you are aware of it and when you're looking for it. And so the North Node moves into Aquarius at 29 degrees of Aquarius. I'm using the true node for tracking the nodes of fate. There's also the mean nodes. The mean nodes are where we track the average of the degrees. And so the mean node doesn't move into Aquarius until August 17th, but the true node has entered the new astrological pairs as of July 26th. So we can look at what has transpired over the past week as the nodes of fate moved into Aquarius and Leo. And we have this Aquarius full moon, which I'll get to in just a moment. But what has occurred is that the astrology app CoStar was sold to Midjourney. Midjourney is an AI company. So here we have astrology, which is Aquarian, CoStar, one of the biggest astrology apps with millions of users, and think of the data in that app. CoStar has so much data on birth charts, on individuals, on people, now being sold to Midjourney. What are they going to do with all that data? What are they going to create from that database of astrological charts and what people have been putting into the app for years? So that just occurred. We also had over the past week an OpenAI test model going rogue and breaks out of a contained testing environment to hack into another company's server. So this is essentially what the AI experts have been discussing as a threat and a worst case scenario, where the test model, the OpenAI test model, becomes autonomous, thinks for itself, and takes sovereign action to breach the testing environment. Essentially, it escapes and breaks into another system. Now, this is the first time it's publicly disclosed. This is not the first time it's happened, because these things are tested in many ways for many years, but it's been publicly disclosed now as an event that has happened. So this is very much the North Node in Aquarius, bringing our attention to not only AI, but AI's sovereignty, capabilities, surpassing human intelligence, which has been described as AI singularity. And in fact, the OpenAI CEO, Sam Altman, has said that we've reached this point. we've reached the point of AI singularity. And then there are people countering that, saying, no, we haven't. So very applicable topic, and we can see it in the astrology. Other things that have transpired over the past week, especially right around this Aquarius full moon, is that American Airlines issued a nationwide ground stop because of an IT outage. This occurred late on July 28th, right before the Aquarius full moon. And these are all Aquarian themes. American airlines are Aquarius. IT outage is Aquarius. And this Aquarius full moon is conjunct Pluto, which signifies more severe situations and challenges. So by the time you hear this could be over. American Airlines can be flying again. They said that flights that were already in the air could continue, but no new flights were able to take off. Then additionally, we had, before the Aquarius full moon, T-Mobile, the cellular network, experienced an outage affecting all mobile and cellular customers and affecting global gaming systems like PlayStation and Xbox Live. All those systems were down. These are all Aquarian themes. So what comes up here is how much we rely on technology for our lives these days. And if you look around, it's in every area of our life. Whether you are flying on a plane or sitting at home, streaming movies, music, or games, our lives are now infiltrated by these systems. And with Pluto in Aquarius, they're going to be challenged. We are going to be looking at new levels of control, surveillance, data collection, and the built-in weaknesses of these systems. Interestingly, this then relates to Chiron in Taurus, which does station retrograde on August 3rd. And Chiron in Taurus brings our attention to what you own, what you have, what is yours, that is in your possession, whether you still have paperback books or all your books are ebooks or all your entertainment is on a screen. Taurus is about the five senses and what we put money towards because it has value to us. It's the books you want to own. It's the garden you want to cultivate. It's what you put into your physical environment because it reflects your standard of living and what's meaningful to you. And so when we look at these strong Aquarius energies and we couple it with this Chiron retrograde in Taurus, it brings our attention to what do I need to have in my physical possession that is truly mine, that provides some stability right now when there are glitches and hacks in these systems that are experiencing outages. Chiron in Taurus will return us to the simple pleasures of life, the simple joys of life. And actually it brings my attention to being a member of Gen X and how as a member of Gen X, we've had multiple ways of listening to music throughout the decades, right? How many of you had a record player and then a tape deck, and then you got your Walkman and your CD player? We kind of skipped the laser disc stuff. And then all of that becomes digital. So you have to buy a new version of your favorite songs. And that's now where we're at with music, where we don't own it anymore like we used to, unless you still have a CD player or boombox. But I have seen a revival of CDs in some stores. That could be a trend with this Chiron and Taurus, where now we want to own it again and we don't want to share because all the Aquarius energy is about sharing. And Taurus is no, mine. This is my toy, my music, my books, my stuff. Get your hands off it. And the reason why we want to own it is because then it's reliable. Then we really have it and we can use it and turn to it as needed. And so that could be something coming up at this time as well with this Chiron stationing retrograde in Taurus, is that you're seeing what you don't have that you want. And you realize this at least brings me a form of security that is a little bit harder to find out there in the world at this time. So it's interesting when we pair these energies together to see how the themes can push us into one area of life more than another. And that's part of why the energies are deep this week and complex. Now, the Aquarius full moon is occurring at 6 degrees 30 minutes of Aquarius in your chart. And I have a video for you on YouTube going through all the energy of this full moon. That's a big deal. This Aquarius full moon takes us into August. It isn't only active here at the end of July. It's almost like an eclipse before we enter eclipse season. The energy is that big. And not only is it because we have that Sun conjunct Jupiter at 6 degrees 30 minutes of Leo, but it's opposing the moon in Aquarius conjunct Pluto. So this brings in a very important part of the story, because that Aquarius full moon conjunct Pluto brings about permanent changes, destructions, something that has to shatter and be recreated, but the shattering is necessary. And so this could bring your awareness to particular parts of your life, your goals, your dreams that are no longer of interest to you. You're realizing, I don't want that anymore. That's not where I'm going. Pluto signifies a death, which is part of the transformation and evolution of our consciousness, but that death is emotionally intense. You could see that there's certain dreams, goals, or life trajectories you've been working on and focused on that no longer have their meaning to you. They no longer feel as personal. They're just not of interest. And so this is where we have the shattering of a life vision. And it also can bring in a big purge. Now, Pluto loves a big purge. And when it's conjunct the moon being the most personal and the most emotional of archetypes, there is a purge here that's necessary, but you might be fighting it. It could be a really big deal. And for some people, it will be, especially if you have planets or points in the early degrees of Aquarius, the early degrees of Leo, the early degrees of the fixed signs, including Taurus or Scorpio. This is where the fight could be a locked-in battle. And what the fight involves is a realization that could be really difficult to face, coming up against your pride, coming up against your sense of self, coming up against what you've always claimed and what you've determined is who you are. And the Aquarius full moon is not letting it go, is requiring a deeper shift that brings about life-changing decisions, insights, and revelations. So there are patterns that are meant to be destroyed, and it's really uncomfortable. You could feel a lot of anger, rage, fear, and big emotions. This could be working with what you are purging in your ego, so an ego death. As part of that solar plexus purge, something could be drastically changing in your creative spirit, in your light body, in your heart. Whatever is in excess, as we've covered previously in the show, is also being amplified in a way that's coming up external, powerful forces. And those external powerful forces could feel as well that they're opposing your light. They're opposing your desires and what you want and what you believe is essential for you. This can also bring up some intense undercurrents that have existed in your unconscious or in your shadow self. This is definitely triggering the collective shadow, as well as what we need to see in ourselves at an individual level and take accountability for. And that's a big theme now, is that each of us is being held accountable for our lives, our choices, our actions, our behaviors. And this Pluto conjunct the moon is bringing it front and center. Can you see your shadow? Can you see the parts of yourself you haven't wanted to fully integrate or claim? And of course, this is different for everybody. But the understanding here is that this is a high level full moon that ultimately upgrades us. It comes through some highly uncomfortable personal realizations and reflections that you haven't seen before. This could be showing up for you as how you were not allowed to shine brightly, how your light made others really uncomfortable and they hated it. They didn't want to accept it. They didn't want to see your talents, your gifts, your creativity. They didn't want to see your confidence, your sense of self, your understanding of who you came in here to be in this life and what you are offering and doing that is unique to you. And so this axis here of Aquarius and Leo brings about how we're all here to shine differently. But not everyone accepts that. Not everybody wants that. In fact, there are others who do not want you to be bright, happy, successful, and confident because they aren't. And instead of taking responsibility for their own choices, I mean, if they just chose to blend in with the beige carpet all their life, that's on them. That's not on you. If they didn't choose to go bigger, to take a risk, to have a more adventurous life, if all they want to do is sit in a cul-de-sac every night and have meatloaf, that's their choice. That's not on you. And so there's energy here that can be really uncomfortable because, again, there are people who haven't fully claimed their shadow, who are not doing their work, who have no self-awareness, and it shows. So that's something that's also really big. Other people's shadow energy is really big right now. It's like, girl, do your healing. This is on you. This isn't on anyone else. This is about your life choices that has nothing to do with anyone else. And you can hide behind projections for only so long. And this is a full moon that says, take responsibility for who you are and how you show up, whatever that looks like. Because even though consciousness on the planet is supposed to be evolving, and it is, human nature is moving more slowly. People's human nature might not be evolving at that core root level. Now, it's meant to be as part of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries at 0 degrees that we just had in February. So we are in these very, very beginning phases, these very newborn phases of human nature evolving, where people can feel more strong, rooted, and safe in who they are. But it means you also have to look at your unhealed self, your competitive nature, your fight or flight instincts. It means you have to be aware of that on an ongoing basis. And that's how healing works. Healing is not a one night, everything changes event. Healing is how you hold yourself accountable on an ongoing basis for who you are, how you feel, your choices, your decisions, your thoughts. And it requires you to work with all levels of your being. And all levels of your being is Aquarius. Aquarius is your full nervous system. It's all of your thoughts. It's how you're also aware of your own neurological patterns. So it requires reprogramming in your thoughts. This brings in neuroplasticity, which is where you're able to have new experiences, new levels of awareness, new events in your life that continue to keep you cognitively engaged in life and self-aware. And so what this full moon is revealing is where people really are and where they aren't. And so this can be a big trigger and a big catalyst that is really uncomfortable for people who have spent 50 years of their life projecting, not doing any healing work, having a very low level of self-awareness. This could be something that springs them forward. This could be something where people who have lived 70 years of their life finally see their choices and their patterns and habits in a whole new way. So ultimately, I'm going to bring in my positive spin here that this can move people forward, but this does require conscious choice and conscious ongoing effort. And not everyone's made for that. So I am a realist. You have to accept that there are people who are never going to change. They are never going to see themselves or move into higher states of self-awareness. That is their free will. That is their sovereign choice. At a higher spiritual level, that can be seen and respected. But it comes down to you. What are you choosing? And it is the right decision to let those people go. It is important to continue to honor who you are and who you came here to be and not hold that back for anyone, to not compromise it, to not negotiate it away. Not everyone at the table has a say. I was just talking with a friend of mine about this, that, there's so many opinions in the world, and he was getting a lot of opinions about selling his house and what people thought about that. And the whole neighborhood had an opinion because him selling his house at a higher price point benefits all of them and their home values. But it comes down to, well, everyone's going to have an opinion, but not everyone's opinion matters. You can listen and say, thank you for sharing, and be polite about it, but that doesn't mean it's something you integrate or you consider as part of your path. What you do with your house and the choices you're making are because you know what you need, and you have more information than they do, and they want to influence you. And so even though we discuss the era of the influencer coming to an end, it's also the influence you're taking on and absorbing from others. Like, whose life is this? Whose path is this? You've got to get solid and clear in what you're choosing and take responsibility for that, and also take responsibility for the influences that you are allowing and absorbing. And so that's a big deal for those of you who are empaths, because this is a time to be stronger in your sense of self, in your solar plexus, in your heart, in your mind, in your full nervous system. And so part of the end of July definitely supports up-leveling your nervous system to be able to handle all the external influences in the world and to keep out what isn't yours, and to be able to identify it sooner rather than later. So these are the strengths of the fixed signs. Again, the fixed signs here are heightened with Leo and Aquarius being activated right now, both fixed signs. The other fixed signs are Taurus and Scorpio. And so how I'm seeing this energy is that if you feel you are ready for the upgrade, because this Aquarius full moon is an upgrade energy for everyone, it brings about quantum elevations. If that's what you are willing to do, I'm seeing the energy going up to the 22nd chakra. Now, think about how as our energy elevates off the planet and moves away from the Earth's atmosphere and goes further into space, it gets darker. You don't have the city lights. You don't even have the light of the sun. And as you continue to move further, especially towards Pluto, what travels with you is your own energy field. And I see this as expanding the light body into these previous untapped areas of consciousness and awareness, which Aquarius is all about. Aquarius wants to continue to pour new consciousness into us in order to support our ongoing elevation and quantum leaps. And so this is an Aquarius full moon where you could feel that you are expanding beyond what you thought was possible or what you could even envision in order to connect with a bigger vision and purpose that is only available to you starting now, starting with this Aquarius full moon, with the built-in discomfort, with the expansion of Jupiter conjunct the sun, with the depth of Pluto working with the moon. There are personal quantum shifts available to us. They might be happening in your dream state. They might be happening when your brain waves are moving slower. They might be occurring when your nervous system can truly feel them and integrate them. But we are moving into new states of consciousness for a reason, and we are moving ahead beyond what we've known because that is what's divinely timed for this time in your life. And it means you could also feel newly fortified around that Leo energy of personal strength, self-leadership, life force, and your creative spirit, which means you know you will always figure it out. You are traveling with a core sense of self that you can trust and believe in, that stabilizes you through the unknown, that gives you a sense of direction internally, even when the external is chaotic, overwhelming, and intense. The light is fortified here. The shadow and darkness may be big. This could be showing up as people who have life patterns of jealousy, life patterns of inadequacy and envy, lifetime patterns of feeling less than or lost for reasons they can't even describe. They don't even know, but that's their work to do. That's their journey to take and their experience to have. And if that's you, that's your journey to experience and your choices to make around how to move through that and elevate that. But it's because you're willing to be brave in the discomfort that you have breakthroughs. And that would be one way to look at this Aquarius full moon. Be brave enough to see your shadow. Be strong enough to face parts of yourself that you want to elevate and change. And that's where you're going to have these breakthroughs. And there's going to be a lot that starts to lighten up and move you forward. And again, this is going to be something that starts to pick up new inspiration and motivation as we move into August. And so I know we have discussed a lot and explored a lot in today's show because of how impactful the energies are right now. So again, basically the power day is July 29th, but the energies are so big that they do last into August. And then on August 3rd, we have that Chiron stationing retrograde at 0 degrees of Taurus. So the Chiron themes are more pronounced as the station retrograde occurs because Chiron sends out a reverberation through the Taurus themes, which includes money, finances, ownership, possession, the earth, natural resources, your creative manifestations, what you seek to enhance your life and your livelihood, where you want more meaning, more joy, more stability. Those are themes that are also quite strong at this time. And I did cover them on Monday's podcast, where the Chiron and Taurus themes have also been showing up through the food recalls and how there have been more extreme recalls of unhealthy food. That is Chiron and Taurus bringing our attention to sustenance, healthy resources, what comes from the land, what is truly organic, what is not, and how it impacts our livelihood and well-being. So thanks for sticking with me through this longer episode. I hope this has been validating for you and what you've been experiencing or moving through. I also hope it brings your attention to what you can powerfully change with this big energy here at the end of July. So as always, I'll be back every Monday and Wednesday with a new astrology podcast for you as we continue to move through these dynamic times. Thank you so much for your time, energy, and presence. I am grateful for all of you, and I'll see you back here soon.